And good day to you. It's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio and our affiliates around this country of the United States. Sirius XM 130, lots of other ways you can listen to the program. I'm Jerry Usher along with Debbie Georgiani and you. And Debbie, as always, we look forward to hearing. We're going to hear a lot from a lot of listeners today. I have a feeling with the topic that we have.
Well, we're already hearing from listeners as of when we posted it yesterday. We started getting some comments already. So I think you've got a lot to say about this, folks. So here's the number, 1-833-288-3986. That's 1-833-288-EWTN. That's how you can remember it as well. Jerry, it's good to have you back. We missed you yesterday. You're traveling, so it looks like you're in a hotel room. We got a lot of nice light there for the Facebook and YouTube, so everybody can see you. So you look well rested, and you got there safely. We prayed for you, but we're glad you're back. Okay, so today, Jerry, are you ready? Drum roll. We're going to be talking about, do you get distracted at Mass? Okay? Yes, we are asking you to out yourself. Okay, admit it, confess. No, I'm just kidding. Do you get distracted during Mass? You go to Mass, you get there, you get in a prayerful state, you get ready for Mass, and you find yourself during the middle of the Mass, you start to daydream. Your thoughts start to wander. You may be thinking about where you're going to go to eat breakfast or dinner, depending on what time Mass you go to, or you're thinking about things you have to do, your errands and stuff like that. Does that happen to you? Let's talk about it. This topic came to us from one of our very loyal listeners who said, I really want to know. I'm curious. Do people get distracted at Mass? Okay, Jerry, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you get distracted during Mass?
Never have in my whole life. Of course. And, sometimes it's not even things that we're thinking about or going on in our lives or looking forward to. Sometimes there are just noises and things around us that can kind of knock us out of that prayerful mood that you were just talking about. So, yeah, I think it's virtually impossible, Debbie, to go to Mass and not have certain things distracting us and stealing our attention away. So maybe another question for our listeners, those of you tuned in today, is how do you kind of bring yourself back, from a distraction, from a noise, from maybe people talking in church or something that's really on your mind that you can't get that thought out of your mind. How do you quiet yourself and just make sure that while you're at Mass, especially, we should be thinking about the Lord all the time, but while you're at Mass in particular, you just try and maintain that focus. Love to hear from you about that.
And we'd love to hear from our clergy. We have a lot of clergy and religious that listen. It would be great to know if you get distracted during Mass. It happens to us. It's probably part of just our normal human behavior and just the things we've got going. So we're talking today on Take Two. If these distractions that come up during Mass, let's just assume they happen. How do you handle it? How do you bring the focus back to why you're there, to be at that beautiful holy sacrifice of the Mass? How do you bring yourself back? Do you feel guilty when you feel distracted? Do you walk out of Mass and say, I know I was there physically, but mentally I wasn't there the whole entire hour. I don't remember the readings. I don't remember the homily. I don't remember anything. Do you feel guilty about that? Do you sit in the front of the church because you're trying to make sure you limit those distractions? Okay, so let's hear from you. Remember, this is your show. We have new listeners every single day, and it's exciting. So we're inviting you in. So this is what happens. You'll call up. You'll speak to Ryan Penny. He's great. He's answering the phones. He'll talk to you for a few minutes. Then he'll put you on hold. But while you're on hold, you get to listen live. So you're not going to miss a single thing. I always was a little bit hesitant, Jerry, about calling into radio shows because I thought they're going to put me on hold. I'm going to go into the abyss. I'm not going to know what's going on in the conversation. And then I'm going to probably repeat myself and look like a fool coming on the air, right? Well, that doesn't happen here. You're going to get to listen live because this is your show. It's very interactive. So here's the number. Call in. Don't hesitate. 833-288-EWTN. That's 1-833-288-3986.
Yeah, and again, it's being human, being being the human beings that we are, and having human nature and so forth. It's not wrong to be distracted at Mass. We're not asking you. Debbie said to out yourself, but it's not something that's wrong. But actually, you know what? Sometimes, Debbie, when we just have basic natural human things that kind of take our attention away from the consecration for a second, or the readings or whatever, we can feel guilty about that. We can kind of leave Mass and feel like, boy, oh boy, I really didn't participate. Maybe feel like even have to confess it. But it's not really something we have to confess. But I think the important part of this conversation is, Debbie and I will learn from you, and you will teach each other as well, because there are a lot of tools, practical things that we can do to implement to make sure that we keep our focus where it should be during Mass. So let us know how you do that. 833-288-3986. As always, this is your show. We have all but two lines are occupied right now. So if you have a take on this, better call right now, and you will be one of the first to get through on the show today.
And we love to get suggestions from our listeners. So like this particular topic, this came from one of our listeners. So if you have a certain show topics or subjects that you'd like to unpack and you'd like the wisdom of other Take Two listeners, then just email us and give us the suggestions. And, we will happily put them on the show calendar. You can email us at take2, the number 2, at EWTN.com. And Jerry and I will respond in a timely manner, although Jerry's traveling and I'm very, very overwhelmed with taking care of my mother. And so just give us maybe a couple days to return the emails, and we'll gladly put those on the show calendar. And Jerry, I think we've taken a good, I'd say 3-4 dozen suggestions and put them on this year's show topic list.
Yeah, well, the thing about this show, Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, is we like to talk about the things that touch upon all of our lives. And Debbie and I come up with a lot of topics. We both go on to, we have a shared document that we post show topics on there. Debbie will, I will. But you live the same lives that we do. And in fact, everyone has a unique sort of life routine and things that happen to you. So yeah, we love to hear from you with show suggestions. So don't ever hesitate to send an email to Take2, it's the number 2, Take2 at EWTN.com, and let us know what you would love to talk about here on the program. So
we're talking a bit today about getting distracted during Mass, and we want to get to your calls right away. So please, Vanessa, just hold on a little bit longer. We're going to get to you. You're going to be first up. But we want to hear from you. If you have something to say about this, if you get distracted during Mass, if you see others getting distracted, does that bother you? Do you sit up close to the altar because you don't want to get distracted? We want to talk about all the aspects of going to Mass and our disposition, our demeanor. It's very important. We can learn a lot about our spiritual lives. So this is your show. Call in at 833-288-3986. And coming up is Vanessa. We're going to be talking about distractions at Mass today on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Great to have you with us. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Thanks to the affiliates for carrying the program. Rich, we got Jeff, we got Ryan screening calls today. Michael also do some call screening for us. Debbie mentioned that I am in Boise, Idaho today, and I'll be giving a talk here in a little over an hour, but a couple of hours from now, at a Priest's Appreciation Lunch. So I'd ask you to keep the priests here, and let's keep all of our priests, of course, in our prayers at this very difficult time for the church. But I also wanted to mention, Debbie, that the wonderful lady who's sponsoring this lunch for these priests, Mary Lou Molitor, and she and her husband Bill started a number of years ago a nonprofit called the St. John Vianney Society, and they support the priests and give financial support and other support to seminarians. And she lost her husband Bill in February of this year. He had heart surgery and was sent home and was seemingly doing just fine. And that night went to bed and actually passed away in bed that night. And so very, very sudden, unexpected loss, very, very tough for Mary Lou and all the people here. And actually the bishop came out and actually celebrated his funeral mass, which is rather rare, and there were about 600 people there. So
wow.
Just tells you how loved Bill and Mary Lou are. So please keep Bill's soul in your prayer, dear folks.
Absolutely.
Bill Molitor and Mary Lou and the entire family. So
please extend our condolences to her. I'm sure you're going to be seeing her at the lunch, right?
Oh yes,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
She'll be here to pick me up shortly.
Oh, good. Okay. I hope after the show. You're not going to leave during the show, right? Okay.
No.
Okay. As promised, though, we're going to go to Vanessa, who's first up in Bedford, New Hampshire, listening on the Station of the Cross. Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for waiting, and welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for taking my call. I heard that you were talking about distractions in Mass, and that really stuck with me because I have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 10-month-old, and I know that you asked about individual distractions, but from where I am in the season of life, my distraction, it actually comes from whenever I take the kids with my husband to Mass, and we are in the cry room, and other adults who are there individually in the cry room, and I find myself distracted with thoughts of, why are you in here? Because you have the opportunity to go and listen and not be distracted. I used to look forward to really going to Mass in college, out of college, and now it's almost like, of course, I still love going to Mass, don't get me wrong, but with children and those distractions alone, and then feeling the pressure of trying to keep them quiet for other adults in the cry room, that also adds another compounded set of distractions. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, like you said, it's your season of life right now when the children are small like that. We've all been through that, Vanessa. It's a tough situation. You definitely want the kids there at Mass because they're part of the family, and it's great to have them start to get into that beautiful habit of going to Mass and understanding the quiet times and all the different elements of our Mass. So I would just you're in the cry room. You have every right to be there with the children. Like you said, I have actually sat in the cry room. One time I had this, it was just a horrible allergy that was going on in Arizona, and it caused this uncontrollable, like, kind of tickle cough that I couldn't stop. And so I purposely sat in the cry room because in case I started one of these, coughing, things, I wouldn't be distracting of others. But you have that's what the cry rooms that at certain churches are there for you to have that freedom to be able to converse with your children and talk to the kids and have the kids, they just boldly speak out loud, so they don't know when exactly to be quiet. So you have every right to be there. What I would do is to allow you to fully partake in the Mass and because if you're going to have these distractions anyway, Vanessa, with the kids and being in the cry room, I used to go over the Mass readings before I went to Mass. So I read them ahead of time. Yep. We read them ahead of time, and we read them out loud in the car on the way to Mass. So I knew what the readings were. So I didn't feel like I was missing that. Then when the consecration came, I always took it upon myself to bring the kids into it by pointing out, what was happening at the altar, that sense of, excitement and what's happening, and heaven and earth are touching, and telling the kids, especially your 4-year-old, could start to understand that right now there's angels, just tons and tons of angels. You can't see them, but they're surrounding the altar right now, and build that sense of excitement. Because I remember as my kids got older, when they were 6 and 7 and 8, they would say, it's time. And they would just focus on the altar. And that was a beautiful thing. Yeah. So I created this sense of excitement, and it helped me as well, Vanessa. But you have every right to be there. I would try.
That's beautiful. I will definitely implement those suggestions.
Yeah. Yeah, try it. See if it changes the way. But you know what? You're in that time of your life with these little toddlers, and so, and this time moves very quickly. Before you know it, Vanessa, you're going to blink, and these kids are going to be off to college. So it's kind of an exciting time.
I know it. We're enjoying every bit of it.
Good deal.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you sound like
Vanessa.
a great mom. Thank you.
God bless. And she's not alone in that, Debbie. A lot of parents with small kids, take them to mass, and some of them may even feel, a little bit. I don't want to say guilty, but what I would say, is that, in Matthew 19, of course, maybe elsewhere, but Jesus says, let the little children come to me, do not hinder them. And obviously, anyone who's a parent, if you have any, like Debbie said, read the readings, maybe the night before or after you go home from church or before you go to church. But I'm sure you realize that your number one priority, and Jesus himself would say this. I will have the audacity to put words in Jesus' mouth right now. He would say, your first priority, of course, is to tend to the kids, and if it distracts you a little bit, like Debbie said, there are other ways to kind of get caught up on the readings, and maybe I don't know if your parish has a priest who records the homilies or something. Maybe you can get a copy of that. But obviously, the first duty is to those beautiful little ones, and Jesus would certainly. I think he would want it that way, Debbie. So
I love I love having the kids there. I think they pick up much more than we give them credit for. And it's a beautiful thing. And they innately are drawn to the Eucharist. I've seen that happen even with babies. It's amazing. So, yeah, they belong there. They're part of the family. And I think it's a good thing. But I loved Vanessa's call. She's so sweet. And having 3 young children, that can be tough. So, okay, Rom, you're up next in San Diego, California on the EWTN app. Thanks so much for waiting, and welcome to Take 2.
Good day. Thank you so much for taking my call. God bless you. I was contemplating this many times already, this distraction issue in the Mass. And I have a great suggestion that's been working for me, which is I believe that we're always in our lives challenged, transcend when we're in prayer or when we're in moments when we're seeking God or we need God, transcending earthly events. And in the Mass, it's a great exercise to practice this. And one technique that I use is I focus. I learn to focus. I use that time to focus on the cross, which is at the head of the church, and showing icon of Jesus, and then knowing his real presence is there during that. And one can practice to direct one's attention there, or at the icon of your choosing. And so in that way, one brings one's mind back into focus. I think the church itself gives us those tools all around us. And in fact, it's an important exercise in this very distracting modern life we live. Even one's day, one can have a cross, and one brings one's focus, to Jesus, rightly how one should live life. So that's my suggestion is learn and practice, because when times really get challenging outside of the Mass, one has this opportunity to exercise each Sunday to the focus. And I think the suffering Jesus on the cross at the head of the church, at the altar, is really, or depending on what's happening, during the Mass, one can focus on something, and that helps brings one's focus back to Jesus.
Yeah, Rom, great point. And I'm glad you talked about focusing on the cross, the crucifix at the front of the church. Hopefully, hopefully all churches have a one that's beautiful and appropriate and fitting and so forth. But yeah, what is the Mass, Debbie and Rom? It's nothing less than the representation of the death and death of Christ on the cross,
Calvary.
His passion and death, Calvary. Yeah. So what better way to really stay focused than to be looking upon the crucifix, because that is exactly what's happening certainly during the consecration on the altar. We're not putting Christ to death again. It's just it's representing that, since God being outside of time and space, that can be presented at any time throughout history. And so I love Rom's point, Debbie, there, and plus it gives you kind of one thing, one place to focus your eyes, and just to be able to stay concentrated on the Passion of Christ. I think is very, very beautiful and appropriate, especially at Mass. Yeah.
And I've talked about this before on previous shows, Rom. Part of a couple penance things that I've gotten out of confession, the priest said to me to meditate on the crucifix during Mass. And I've never done that before. And I've done that a few times, and it really is a great spiritual exercise. And so I thought it was a little odd of a penance, to be honest with you, but it was a very effective penance. And so I would agree with you on that is, and then we can take that when we have other things that are happening in our lives to remember to meditate upon the cross. And, that's huge. That takes us in many different levels with our spirituality and our relationship with God and our understanding of salvation. And so, yeah, I love it. Rom, I think that's awesome. Thank you so much for weighing in on this, because that's what we wanted to do, have this really candid discussion about this, and then find the tools that can help us refocus. And you gave us that exactly. So we appreciate that very, very much.
Indeed. Even if from a great distance, if you're across many children, and bless those children in the Mass, even from a great distance, one's eyes can still gaze, through all the noise, on that cross, even from the furthest row in the back of the church, and it works. Trust me. God is good.
Oh, yeah.
All the time, Ron. Thank you so much for your call and your take on this topic. We heard also via email from our good friend Ben, who listens, I think, just about every day, Debbie.
Yeah.
Ben said, my children and I always sit in the cry room at Mass because they have a hard time sitting still and they want to play all the time. He says, what I do is, it sounds like what you said, Debbie. Ben says, what I do is point to things in the church and tell them about those things. I also tell them to pray to Jesus and tell them about the body and blood of Christ. And he says they're starting to understand. Wow.
Right. And depending on
Great
their
stuff.
age, depending on their age, Jerry, you can get children's Mass missals. You can get, things for children that they can look at, and you can point out, say, that's really what's happening. When they show the chalice and they show what's happening at the altar, you can say, yeah, it's happening right here. And you can get them to see the bigger picture, because children are such concrete learners and thinkers. They may need those children's age appropriate tools. Real quickly, Judy could not hold. She was on Sirius XM, and she said she sits up close to the altar and she closes her eyes during the homily, and that's how she stays focused. I've seen other people do that as well, Judy, and no, they're not sleeping. They are concentrating, so that's a good thing. Okay, Jerry.
All right. Back to your calls. Do you get distracted at Mass, and how do you get refocused on what's going on? 833-288-3986. Megan is next, listening in Dallas on Guadalupe Radio. Hi, Megan. You're on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Hi, good morning. Yes. Well, I'm listening to everything y'all are saying, and I'm in that phase too, where I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and we've made it through the crying stages. But I wish I could reach out to those moms with the little ones and say, hey, here's how you do it. But, everybody has their own way. I think what worked for us after, the guinea pig, the first child, that you give toys to and so forth, which, yes, I found that could even be a distraction. If you give your child a toy, that in itself could be a distraction to the children around you. So we just tried the youngest, they just simply had to stay in our arms. And if they cried, then we went to the cry room. But everyone, they learned that this was an hour that we can't get down. This is an hour that we have to be quiet. And I can't say that'll work for everyone, but it sure worked for us. But I teach second grade catechism. And, my kids, we encourage them to go to Mass, even if they go to class. And I say, you know what, when you do the sign of the cross, you're asking God, you're asking Christ to be present. And you have to remember that after you do it, that you've asked him to be there. And, we're all going to get distracted. We're all human. My personal crutch is babies. I see a baby, and I just want to smile and interact. But for them, just to feel the presence and know. And I remind them, I'm like, yes, we all get distracted. But whether we wish it to be or do it on purpose, if you're a distraction, if you're causing the distraction for someone else, that can be a sin in a way. And I try to say that as, without any, malice or make them feel bad. But,
Sure.
We are there and we've asked Christ to be present. And if you're going to be a distraction, you are hurting someone else. And to hurt someone else, that is a sin. And I'm sure there's so much more to say. We attend a cathedral, so there are constant reminders that Christ is present around us.
Right.
Beautiful stained glass windows, beautiful statues. It's so easy to come back to focus. But just this is a very personal thing, and I'm sure y'all are going to have something to say on it. But if you attend a mass where it's a circular and the altar's in the middle, and it's so much harder for me to stay focused.
Right.
And I think that you might also have to find a place that fits you and your personality and what helps you.
Yeah, Megan, great stuff. Great stuff. And we'll comment on some of the things you said. We're going to let you get on with your day. But thank you so much. And thank you for being a religious education teacher. I mean, that's a great ministry, and you're doing such great work in your vocation at home and with the children. So when we come back, we'll have some more comments about Megan's call on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
This is Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and you. We have an open phone line. If you'd like to get on board with Vicki and Michelle and the others, it's 833-288-3986. Talking about distractions at Mass, almost inevitable because we are human. We have all of our senses, sight and sound and so forth. And so anything that happens, there could be a crying baby, which is a beautiful thing, but that might get our focus away from, say, the readings or something, or maybe people talking in church. In fact, Debbie, we were hearing from Megan there. By the way, let me get the phone number out. It's 833-288-3986. Join us with your take on this. But what I kind of latched on to what Megan was talking about is we need to avoid being the distraction at Mass. And I know we've talked about this, probably on previous shows before, but my parish, for example, has signs up that say, beyond this point, please observe sacred silence. And that's when people are going into the body of the church itself. And so, yeah, a concern for me is always when people are talking inside the church and almost as if they're out to coffee with their friends and so forth. So I really I like what Megan said, at least on that point, that we can actually be a cause of distractions for other people, and we need to be there to be focusing and reverent and quieting our hearts before the Lord and concentrating on what's going on.
Right. And yeah, I loved what Megan had to say about being respectful of others. I think from children all the way to adults, we have to be cognizant of that. We have to be reminded of that. Sometimes we think especially side talking, Jerry, that's one thing I think can be very disrespectful. Although there's people that are hearing impaired that need some talking to during Mass a little bit. And so it's kind of, you gotta I don't know. You got to kind of weigh each situation. Everybody's got their reasons why they kind of disrupt Mass for a little bit. Okay, so up next is Vicki in Duluth, Minnesota, on Real Presence Radio. Hi, Vicki. Thanks for waiting and welcome to Take Two.
Welcome. Okay, so I've got a couple of things. One thing you mentioned, doing the readings. I always read them the night before, and then I try to pick out a word. Like it can be anything. Today was Vincent because of St. Vincent. But I try to pick out a word that I know the next day I'll listen for. And it's a silly little trick, but I read the whole reading, try and get the meaning of it, and then I go, okay, I'm going to listen for this word. And it just keeps me on my toes because I'm super hyper and super distractible. And so that's one thing. And then I was gone from the church for 20-something years, and I learned to take notes during the homily. So I actually take keyword notes, and I tell the priest so they don't think I'm just being weird. Well, they probably do, but that's okay. And the notes really help me to go back and go, oh, that's what he said. It was really good, and I've forgotten what he said. And you only have to take a couple of words. You know, like yesterday our priest talked about secular priests, which is a term that most of us aren't familiar with, and it was really cool because it doesn't mean what you think it might mean. And just keep taking a few key words, and not on my phone because that looks really bad.
Right.
I have it in a little piece of paper and on a little booklet. And when we got a new priest, I actually told him, and he had been prepped by the priest before, that, if you see her writing during the homily, that's what's going on. And for me, that's a really good thing because I can go back and go, oh, I loved it when he said such and such.
Yeah, I love it.
Right.
What do you think, Jerry?
Yeah, what you're reminding me of, Vicki, is many, many years ago, I knew a priest, and when he did masses for children, he actually would tell them that very, very same thing. He would say, when I give the homily, he said, he would tell them, pick a word, pick a certain word that stands out at you. And then he wanted to talk with them, and he'd ask them to raise their hands, maybe after Mass or whatever, and tell them what that word was, and then maybe talk about that a little bit. And it was cute because he said the kids started to refer to him as Father Pick a Word, which was
Pick a word.
Father Pick a Word, yeah. But Debbie, boy, wouldn't it be nice if more of us, I can say that I'm guilty of often leaving church and not remembering a thing that Father said, even though I'm paying attention. That's just memory loss. But wouldn't it be awesome if, like Vicki, all of us started showing up with pads and pencils and pens,
notebooks,
and taking notes, and then not just taking notes for notes' sake, but actually going back over them later on and trying to learn more, not just during the actual homily itself, but even outside of Mass time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's why a lot of priests, they record their homilies now so that people can go back and listen to the homilies. And I think that's been very helpful. That's a recent development of the last really kind of few years. We're starting to see that, and they post them on Facebook or they post them on the parish website. And I think that's really good to go back and listen to. But Vicki, I don't take notes at Mass because I take notes all week long during Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. But what Marty and I do is that when we go into Mass, we always kind of do this little, it's not like a game, but I guess you could call it a game. We'll say, okay, after Mass, we're going to do our takeaways of what we got from the readings and what we got from the homily and anything else that kind of came to you during Mass, and see what you come up with. And it's very interesting because talk about keeping you on your toes. That's what it does for us, because we're trying to listen for something that we can kind of, we can teach each other, or we can be the one to say, hey, I caught what Father was saying. He was trying to teach us this. And it's very interesting. But it does help to talk about Mass after Mass. I think sometimes when we're done with Mass, we go on with our regular day, but I think to continue the conversation is very, very helpful. What do you think about that? It sounds like you would agree because you're taking notes, so it sounds like you'd like to keep it going.
Oh, absolutely. And I had one person say, I missed yesterday. What did he say? And then I've actually had the priest, too, say, I think I talked about such and such, because I go to daily Mass. Mm-hmm. And I say, yes, on this date, you mentioned, and because a lot of priests kind of wing it on the daily Masses, which is wonderful. I mean, when I say wing it, they do an excellent job, but it's a shorter job.
Yeah, kind of off the cuff.
It is off the cuff, and I love it. It makes it's wonderful. But I know me, and I have to pay attention, and reading the night before or the day before is really, or even the day, earlier in the morning, reading the readings makes them so much more alive, because I have an idea what he's going to say. And then every so often I get it'll be the wrong thing. And so, that'll really keep me on my toes. But it's any of those things I think help. And then I bought myself the whole complete missal that is part in Latin and part in English, and it's got both. And I love to read the Latin while he's doing the English, just because I'm Hispanic and I read Spanish. So that also keeps me on my toes, reading it in Latin while he's saying it in English. I know that sounds weird.
Not at all.
But if you like if you like languages, it can really keep you focused.
Yeah. No, it's not weird at all, Vicki. That is actually, you are just, it really shows that your love, and like you said, you're a revert to Catholicism. Welcome back home. Congratulations. Praise God for that. And it's another good point, Vicki, that you said, going to, a non-Catholic Christian church for many, many years, you got into that discipline, that habit of taking notes during the sermons that were given, and you brought that back with you, and again, it maybe seems a little bit foreign to many of us who are listening as Catholics, because it's not typically done. But boy, Debbie, I'll tell you that kind of thing really shows. I think shows a very serious interest on the part of Vicki to not only just absorb the homily just for those 6, 8, 10 minutes, but also to live that outside the Mass.
You're invested fully in your faith, Vicki. Yeah. It's very obvious, and that's a beautiful thing. And you just have to imagine, especially since you're a daily Mass goer, the good Lord smiles upon that. I mean, you're actively participating. You're wanting to grow deeper in your relationship with God, and you're fully in, and that's a beautiful thing. Our prayer for you is you continue on that path and bring as many people with you as possible, because more and more people need to be just like that and fully invested in their faith. So thank you for your beautiful call, and thank you for blessing our conversation.
Thanks, Vicki. Great to hear from you on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, talking about distractions at Mass. What are some of the things that cause you to be distracted, and how do you bring yourself back to really do our best? Debbie, I don't think we can have perfect, 100% attention at Mass, but we want to do the best that we can. So here's an open phone line for you to get in at 833-288-3986. And Michelle, we're going right to you. But first, just a couple Facebook comments. Sarah on Facebook, EWTN Catholic Radio, Debbie says, I've been distracted by noise and by people who come late in the middle of Mass trying to find a seat, and the occasional person who is talking on a cell phone or playing video games. Oh, my goodness.
No, that's not good.
Yeah. And Philip said, I am only distracted by, by priests who deviate and innovate from the rubrics. Okay, so Philip is kind of paying attention to make sure that the Mass is said properly. So.
Speaking about being on phones and stuff, unless you have an emergency or you're like the caregiver of somebody or there's something happening in your home, I mean, we really should keep our phones away from us, in our purses, in our pockets, and not out during Mass, because it is a distract. I mean, even if you're looking up readings, even if you're reading during the Mass, or in the car, you're keeping it in the car, because here's the problem, Jerry. Other people are going to be very distracted by that. They're going to say, what are they doing? Why are they here? There's, don't they know what's going on here? Why are they on their phones? And so I think the phone is really a sore point for a lot of people. We have to, we just got to be careful with it, how we bring it out during Mass, because people are looking at us, right?
All right, 833-288-3986. As we go to Michelle. Michelle, you will get our Virtual Patience Award today. You've been holding very graciously in San Antonio, listening to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on Guadalupe Radio. Hi, Michelle. Welcome.
Hi, Jerry and Debbie.
Hi
Hi,
there.
Michelle.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Very well.
Hi.
Hi.
Wonderful. Thanks for letting me call in today.
Sure.
Yeah, I just had to call in when I heard the topic of the day because it was something that I had spent a lot of time working on and developing. Last year, I finished my master's in arts education, and ironically, I actually developed a math project through concepts of art education and drama education. And I am a mom of now 4 kids, but at the time I had 3 kids under 3, and we went to Mass every Sunday. And every Sunday it looked like we had never gone to Mass before. And my kids just didn't know how to behave. You know, they're feeding off of each other. I tried to bring things into church that became distracting, and they fought over it. And then one day when my daughter Maria was, I would say, about 4.5, maybe 5, she said, I was so aggravated this one day because she was drawing so much attention to herself, and she has a little bit of ADD. And at the end of Mass, she said, Mom, I don't ever want to come to Mass again, and something like, and I don't really like God, or something just horrible. And I knew that this was coming from the dynamic of me not being able to help her participate in the Mass. So I started thinking about how to break down the Mass. She at the time was going through Montessori school. And Maria Montessori says about children that they can participate in an age-appropriate way in whatever part of our life. We don't have to teach them as incapable people. So I thought to myself, what age development can they participate in the Mass? And so I developed a little booklet that I asked for prayers for that I could eventually share publicly. And I 6 families participated in this study over a period of 2 months, and there was amazing transformation in the family dynamic at Mass. And the principles of the book are mainly to find ways for children to engage with their mind. So what are they seeing? And those were represented by a actual picture. And then what they see, how did that translate spiritually? So we would use an artistic representation.
Right.
And so then they got to draw into, okay, this is what this looks like. There's a procession of people, but it's like as if Jesus was entering into Jerusalem.
Gotcha. So you make that connection for them.
Connection.
Right. So
Right.
has this book come to be, Michelle? I mean, are you circulating this book now, or where are you at with the project? Because that's fabulous what you're doing with it.
Yes, thank you. I am hoping to launch it with through CraftyCatholicMoms.com, which is a website my friend and I are developing. At first as a digital copy that people can put together themselves, and while I develop the publishing aspect of the book.
Wow.
It also is very much things that we can follow as an adult, because I don't think that we remember to use our dramatic imagination while we are at Mass.
Very true.
You know, we see one reality, but there's something completely mysterious, mystical going on.
Right. And you're using your creative abilities to connect that for us as children and for adults, so that we can bring ourselves into that present moment with a newfound feeling, if you will, or concept in our mind or even in our hearts, and how that translates to us. I love it. Michelle, can you email us some of the details of your project? I just would be curious to see if there's any way, we can help get the word out. I think it's wonderful, and I think it could be used definitely throughout throughout parishes. If it's if it's widely received, that'd be awesome for you, because it sounds like it's near and dear to you, and it's a vocation for you at this point. So if you could email us, take two, the number 2 at EWTN.com, we would love to hear more about it. Unfortunately, the way how quickly the show moves, it's hard for us to really dive deeply into this, but I love the concept, Michelle, and I love that you used your creative abilities to be able to produce it. Jerry?
Yeah, I was going to say, great job, Michelle. Very, innovative. You're taking what could be sometimes a bit of a challenge, but turning it into an opportunity. So, if you care to, Michelle, like Debbie said, feel free to email us more details. It's take2 at EWTN.com. Thank you for your call. We appreciate that so much. Maura, hold on. We're going to get to you in a minute.
Thanks,
God
Michelle.
bless, Michelle. And I mentioned earlier in the show, I am in Boise, Idaho. I'll be speaking to a group of priests today at a priest appreciation lunch. Dear friends, please tell our priests how much we love them, we appreciate them, we're supporting them. Hold your head high, Father. Be joyful. Be proud to be a Catholic priest. We are with you. We're behind you. Yes, stay strong. We're with you 100%. And to that end, the Poor Clares of Perpetual Adoration at Our Lady of the Angels Monastery there on the campus of EWTN, and the Franciscan Missionaries of the Eternal Word are praying that those who suffered abuse may find healing. Let's always make the abuse victims our number one prayer when we talk about the scandal and the cover-ups and all of that. We got to let the victims know too that we are with them, and they are offering holy hours for healing and justice. It's every Sunday night at 6 p.m. Eastern on EWTN TV, and also it airs on Radio Classics. So if you want to truly be a part of helping to turn things around, get the mending, the healing going on, we are beseeching the Lord, and you can join the Poor Clares of Perpetual Adoration and the Franciscan Missionaries of the Eternal Word, again, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on EWTN TV and also on the Radio Classics radio signal. So please do that.
Well done. Okay, Maura, in Houston, Texas, on Sirius XM 130, welcome to our show, Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Hi. I've never called any radio station before, so bear with me.
Okay.
But
welcome.
I was thinking about this, and this may be controversial, but my daughter moved to UAB. She's going to PA school, and we went to church in Birmingham, and we're from Houston, and our church in Houston is very praise and worship music that we attend, and we love it. And we got to Birmingham, and the Mass was said in Latin. And I feel that having grown up, I grew up, with Latin as a youngster, and I felt like we were in another country. We did not get out of the Mass like we do in Houston. We kind of went into ourselves with the Lord. It wasn't like a group experience. We couldn't sing the songs. I just feel like they need to rethink this, and I feel like they may lose a good portion of the youth if they stay with this Latin, because you're removed.
Well, Maura, the first thing I would say is there are probably a number of churches. In fact, I know there are a number of churches in the Birmingham area. So perhaps you can find a parish or a mass, even at this particular parish that you're talking about, that is in English. There are obviously masses in Spanish as well, and other tongues. You'll find masses offered oftentimes in Polish and German and so forth. But I'm certain that there are other masses that you might be able to look into. So maybe just go online and Google Catholic churches in Birmingham and see what comes up. But the Latin is the I think still the official language of the church. I know the church documents, Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong, talk about Latin having pride of place, as they call it, which of course typically today the Latin is used oftentimes in the extraordinary form of the Mass. But anyway, I think that Maura should be able to find a Mass at that parish or a different parish, if the preference is for English.
Right. And the other thing too, Maura, I think what you're referring to, and you started off, first of all, thank you so much for calling in and making this your first time calling in. I hope you really enjoy this experience, and I hope you call again. First of all, it's not controversial because I hear it all the time. In fact, I have family members that complain about the responses being in Latin all the time because they've forgotten it as a child and they don't even know what they're saying, and they hear other people saying it, kind of rattling it off, and they don't know how to say it. That's why a lot of parishes are putting the translations on a card or in some form in the pews so that you can follow along. Here's what I would suggest, because this is a couple things. I've struggled with it myself, Maura, because I was on the cusp of when there really wasn't that much Latin anymore when I was growing up, and then it was mostly English. Now we're back to Latin responses. I've created this kind of game in our home where we're learning a new language, and in learning that new language, it expands your mind in many ways. I've heard it said that Satan absolutely hates prayers in Latin, which makes them all the more powerful. So think of it like that when you're attempting to say it in Latin or pray it in Latin or respond in Latin. Satan is not happy about that, and that's always a good thing for us because that means we're on the right path. The other thing too is it lends to a much greater reverence during the whole service when prayers are sung or responded in Latin, and so I've learned to approach it that way, and so I'm very open to it now. Plus the fact that just by learning a new language or attempting to learn a new language, it does enhance and it does broaden your grasp of things, especially when you understand what the translation is. So I would just I understand where you're coming from though, Maura, because I have a praise and worship church that I attend here in Arizona, and it's the same thing, and they're starting to move closer and closer with more Latin, and a lot of people are grumbling about it, but you know what? I'm taking it on a different way, and I'm kind of embracing it, and I'm loving what it's doing for me spiritually. So I don't know if that can help for you, but what do you think?
Okay.
Are you open to it?
I'll try to rethink it, but it sure would be nice to have the translation.
Yeah.
Because
well, tell the priest
several
that.
of our churches here are going that way, and
Yep.
it just seems, I felt like they were going backwards. I don't know, I have 5 children, and I just want to keep them active in the church.
Sure.
And if I'm feeling displaced when the Latin comes on, that's what alarms me.
Right. Understandably
I
so.
think-
That was my
I think-
2 cents on the subject.
Yeah, and more, like Debbie said, maybe make a request of the priest, of the pastor, to say it's really great that you're offering the Mass in the Latin language. Obviously, most of us, probably all of us, didn't study Latin, or many of us have forgotten what we studied. So could you possibly provide a side-by-side translation? Debbie, I know a lot of parishes do that. Mm-hmm. And another thing, too, Maura, my experience, Debbie, maybe yours as well, has been that the Latin Masses are attracting a lot of young families right now with young kids
absolutely.
and so forth. And they're actually using the occasion to teach. Maura, think about this. I studied Latin for 2 years in college, and I can tell you that it opened up the English language for me in ways that studying English itself never had before, because, of course, Latin is the mother of so many languages. So maybe even consider getting your kids some instruction in the Latin language.
Right.
Thanks, Maura.
And ask your priest to do monthly or even quarterly teaching masses. It's very healthy for the congregation. We can always keep learning what's happening. Jerry, I just wanted to say real quickly, because somebody just texted me and said, Debbie, how do you stay focused during the consecration? Well, everybody should know this by now. My love for the angels. Okay, and so during the consecration, I just imagine all the thousands upon thousands and thousands of angels that are surrounding the altar, which is what we've heard from saints and other people who have studied angels, that they all come around the altar during the consecration. And I think, wow, this is pretty cool. I'm really close with the angels right now. So that's how I stay focused, Jerry. I just wanted to add that because I'm getting some text messages asking how I stay in tune. What do you think? Okay. So, Maura, thank you again so very, very much for your call. We hope you call again. And tomorrow, I just wanted to say real quickly, tomorrow, Jerry, we're going to be doing unscripted. So it's a great time. If you didn't get on today, you could always call in tomorrow, revisit some topics. You can bring up suggestions for future topics. You can ask us pretty much anything. We're here to please. We'll do the best we can. Or you can always email us at take2 at EWTN.com. So please make sure you keep the conversation going. Unscripted is a very popular show. It's an open format, and it's just a wonderful way for us to connect with the Take Two family. And it's just a beautiful time for us to, kind of tie up everything, Jerry. And it's just, don't you love Unscripted? Okay. Okay, so we might have just lost a little bit of audio over Jerry. Jerry, have a wonderful time at your talk, and we wish you the best. Prayers with you. Tomorrow is Unscripted, folks, and this is your show. This is your show, so make sure you start getting your questions ready, your comments, and then call in. Call in and just do your best to make Unscripted so popular, because that's what we love. Until tomorrow, have a beautiful and blessed day. We'll see you real soon.